Bibles, Malachi chapter 3, verse 6, if you've got them, Malachi 3, verse 6, and then we're going to read a few things before as we do the sermon. Malachi 3, verse 6. Before we read that text, I live in Nigeria. I still live in Nigeria. I don't have a home here. I have a home in Lagos. I'm in Nigeria the whole of November, ministering in my church. I go to Nigeria. I should be in Nigeria 4 times a year. That's the plan. I'm in London for 3 months. I should be in Nigeria the 4th month. I haven't done that this year, but that's the plan. So I still have a house in Nigeria. And if you know Africa well, we don't generate electricity constantly. There's one of the challenges of living in Lagos is the times when there's an outage of power. Raymond, are there outages of power in Uganda? So you guys have the luxury that constantly in London there's power. I've never woken up in London and there's no electricity. I've never woken up in London and the place is dark. But in Nigeria, in Lagos, it's standard. You have more darkness than light. You kind of get used to it. And so every now and again you wake up in the middle of the night and power's gone. And so I live in a house that's like a duplex, we call it, downstairs, upstairs, and good house. And maybe I left my phone downstairs. I'm upstairs. I need to go downstairs to grab something, and the place is pitch dark. I can't see anything. I can't see anything. I don't have my phone to turn my torchlight on. There's no light, but I need to go downstairs, and it's kind of a journey because you're coming upstairs. It's kind of a very large house, and then what then would help me is somehow I know the door of my room, and I know the door. I'm sure that here is the door. So I'm in darkness. But so even though I'm in darkness, I'm sure of this door. I know that this is the door of my room, and once I put my hands out, I touch the door of my room, and then I feel I could walk through the darkness. I come out of my room, and I'm in the landing, and when I put my hands out, I could feel the rails. I'm in darkness. I can't really see. But I know that the rail is there. And once I touch the rail, I can start moving in the darkness. And I walk down the stairs. I kind of know how many stairs that I have. So when I count them, I know the stairs will be there. I'm in darkness, but I'm still able to navigate the darkness. Somebody say navigate the darkness. I'm in darkness. I can't see, but there are things I'm sure of. Am I talking to someone here this morning? I'm kind of things are not. It's all dark. I'm disillusioned. I can't see properly. It's pitch dark, but once there are things I'm sure of. So when I touch the rail, I kind of know where I'm going. And then I come downstairs. There's a wall here. I know that the wall will be there. I may not see other things, but when I stretch my hands and touch the wall, I know where I am. I come out, and then I turn left, and I'm able to navigate the darkness to where I am going. Because even though it is dark, there are things I am sure of. There are things I know are there. Let me tell you something. This Christian journey will bring you to moments of darkness. I know they have preached to you that you come to Christ and it will be rosy. I know they have given you preachings that when you follow Jesus, that it'd be like a walk in the park. That's not true. There'll be moments in your pilgrimage when there'll be seasons of darkness. Am I talking to real people this morning? There'll be moments in this journey. I don't know the gospel they preach to you, but I know that the moment I gave my life to Jesus, I became a marked man. The moment I gave my life to Jesus, I've had good times. God's blessed me. But my life has not always been light. My life has not always been full of pleasure. There's been moments in this Christian journey when I've had to go through pitch darkness. And the reason why I was able to navigate the darkness was because there were certain things I was sure of. If you're going to navigate the darkness in your pilgrimage, you better be sure of some things. So I want to preach a sermon I hope this sermon helps you because it's helped me. I want to preach a sermon this morning that I've entitled, I Am Convinced. Somebody say, I am convinced. I am convinced. Let's read Malachi 3 verse 6. For I, the Lord, I do not change. Therefore, you, O children of Israel, are not consumed. Let's pray this morning. Heavenly Father, I pray, God, that we will walk away from here this day more equipped to deal with the dark seasons of our lives. That we're able to navigate through the hard times without losing our faith. Let this word bring understanding. In Jesus' mighty name. And all God's people said, there's a sad commentary when you look at the church and when you look at Christians or when you look at the world. And that sad commentary is that oftentimes it is difficult these days to find people who are sure of anything. It's kind of hard these days to find a man or a woman who can say, I know this. I am certain of this. I am sure of this. These days, people talk like politicians. They're not quite sure. I see A or B. They're not quite. To find people these days who could speak in certain terms and who could say, I know this. I am sure of this. It's kind of hard. And it's not just out in the world. It's also in the church. To run into Christians who can say, I know this about God. I am sure of this about God. You know what Daniel said? Daniel said, those who know their God. Those who know their God shall be strong and shall do. And so there's a link between being strong and doing exploit. There's a link between that and what you know about God. Not what your pastor told you about God. Not what your sister told you about God. But what somebody say you, what you know about God. Because in the dark times, in the dark moments, it's not just what Pastor Emmanuel told you about God that will pull you through. It is what you know about God. Daniel says, those who know their God shall be strong and shall do exploits. So my problem is that it's hard to find people who know. Christians are kind of, not quite sure. What do you know about? I'm not quite, no. What have you experienced about God? I'm not quite, one time I went to Ghana to preach. I went to Accra to preach. So we had, was ministry for a pastor in Accra. So my wife is from Ghana. So my mother-in-law, she's passed on now. She was in Ghana. So I'm going to go visit I can't come to Ghana and not go visit my mother-in-law. So I'm going to go visit my mother-in-law. She lives in a place called maybe East Legon. That's the place. I don't know the place. So me and this pastor that I went to go preach, we jump into a car. We start going towards East Legon to go see my mother-in-law. We don't know the place. So we see a guy on the road. We asked the guy, do you know where East Legon is? He said, yeah, I know where East Legon is. We said, jump in. Come show us where East Legon. He jumps into the car. We start driving. Halfway, he says we should stop. We stop. The guy who says he knows where East Legon is asking another guy, do you know where East Legon is? Nobody seems to know anything. Nobody seems to be sure of anything. And that's not just what you find in the world. This is what you find in church. There are Christians who come to church Sunday, and if you ask them, what do you really know about God? Not what I told you. What have you, can you stand and say, I know that God is like this. I know that God is like this. So when I'm walking through the dark moments of life and I can't see, I can touch, I know God is like this. Let me tell you, you're not going to make this journey if you don't know. There are things you got to be convinced about. Not what your mother told you. Not what your father told you. If at this stage in your Christian journey, you can't stand and say, I know that God is like this, you're not going to make it. Because let me tell you something. God is not going to exempt, no pilgrim is exempt from the dark seasons of the pilgrimage. God didn't exempt Jesus from the dark times. Why would he exempt you from it? God didn't exempt Paul from the dark moments. Why would he? So this Christianity we're peddling that says all is going to be light, all is going to be good, that's not genuine Christianity. That's not authentic Christianity. Authentic Christianity has good times. Authentic Christianity also has bad times. Problem is, do you know enough? Do you know enough of God to navigate through the dark times. Am I talking to real people this morning? Can you walk through the dark like I walk through the dark in my house, and I know the door is here. I might not see, but I know the door is here. I know the rail, the stair is here. And when I follow it, I'm not seeing, but I'm able to navigate the darkness because of what I know. It was Helen Keller who said, I don't want the peace that passes understanding. She said, I want the understanding that brings peace. Let me say that again. The Bible talks about the peace that passes understanding. Helen Keller said that's fine, to have peace that passes understanding. She said there are moments where what you need is not peace that passes understanding. What you need is the understanding that brings peace. I know I might be going through darkness, but I know. I might be going through moments of pain, but I know. I might be going through times of problems on my marriage, my relationship, my career, my health, but I know. Those who know their God shall be strong and shall do. What do you know about God? What do you know about God that you can say, I'm convinced that God is like this? Because you're going to need that. You're going to need that. You're going to need that. You know, 2010, I resigned from American Express. Left, I was senior analyst programmer. I'm a pretty good programmer back in the days. We resigned from American Express. Felt God called us to Nigeria. We went to Nigeria, pioneered a church for 5 years, from 2010 to 2015, came back to London again, and felt the church I went to go pioneer was the church me and Pastor Clement used to be in. And then 2016, I went back again to Nigeria from scratch, and then built a church from scratch. And then kids began to grow up, and then we had to return. We left Nigeria and came back to London, and there was nothing for us. I used to be in IT. The industry had moved on. My days there, during my time, there was no AI programming. Everything I knew was outdated. I've come back with my family, no job. I've come back with my family. I remember when you've tasted good life, it's kind of hard. I'm rolling with back in American Express, I'm senior on this program. I'm rolling with my vice president. So I've come back, no job, no work. Like, our house wasn't even available. My tenant won't move. It was hard. I said, God, I went to serve you in Nigeria as a missionary. And I've returned and you kind of abandoned me. I'm angry with God. I'm upset with God. I'm walking through darkness. How did I survive? Because there were things I knew about God that even when I doubt myself, I know that God is like this. Even when things are not working out well, even when I'm upset, I can say, I am convinced that God is like this. I want to tell you what some of those convictions are. And the one person who will speak about what they know about God is the Apostle Paul. And I want to give you kind of a bit of understanding of the Apostle Paul so you can understand where we're going. Here is the Apostle Paul. He had all kinds of crises. But at the end of his life, the apostle said, I have run the race. He said, I've finished the race. He said, I've done the job. He said, there is now laid for me a crown. How is it that this man, I'm going to show you a few things the Apostle Paul went through. And the question we must ask ourselves is, how did you go through all of this and still make it? How did you, let me read it for you. 2 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 23 to 26. Apostle Paul is writing, he says, are they servants of Christ? I am a better one. I am talking like a madman. That he now starts saying what happened to him. He said, with far greater labors, far more imprisonment. Let me ask you a question here. Anyone here been to prison before? What's the Apostle Paul serving the Lord? What is he in prison? I'm not quite sure that's what he signed up. I'm not quite sure that when he gave his life to Jesus, that he signed up for what? Imprisonment. But he says, far more imprisonments with countless beatings. What is that? I didn't sign up to follow Jesus to be beaten. But that's what's going on. That's what's going on. And often near death. 5 times I received at the hands of the Jews, 40 lashes less one. That's 39 strokes. 3 times I was beaten with rods. Once I was stoned. What is that? 3 times I was is it on the board? 3 times I was shipwrecked. A night and a day I was adrift at sea, on frequent journeys, in danger from rivers, danger from robbers, danger from my own people, danger from Gentiles, danger in the city, danger in the wilderness, danger at sea, danger from false brothers. This is a Christian like you and I. What the Apostle Paul is going through, he's going through a dark moment. How many people here, you say, Pastor, there have been periods in my walk with God that I went through a dark season? Anyone here? Anyone here? Walked through a dark season. We're going to look at why the Apostle Paul survived. Because whatever helped him survive the dark seasons of his pilgrimage will help you and I survive the dark seasons of our own pilgrimage. And if you're here, you think, I will never go through a dark season, you could get up and leave. This sermon is not for you. I am preaching to real Christians. I'm preaching to real Christians who know that God does bless us. There are times of enjoyment. There are times of light. There are times of, but there are also moments of darkness. The Son of God one time was hanging on the cross, shouting, my Lord, why have you forsaken? That's the Son of God. So God did not even exempt darkness from his Son from darkness. God did not even say, because you're my Son, this, everything. No. If he didn't exempt Jesus from dark seasons, he wouldn't exempt you and I from dark seasons. So you and I, what we should do today is to say, God, I know there will be times when I will go through the dark times, but I need to know the things I need to know in order to navigate through those dark seasons. How did Paul navigate through the dark seasons? If you read about the Apostle Paul and his writings, there's a phrase that constantly appears in his writings. And that phrase is, I am convinced. Or when he doesn't say, I am convinced, he will say, I am sure. So when he's not saying, I am convinced, he's saying, I am sure. And when we do a forensic examination of those phrases, we can begin to understand how this man could go through all of this and still make it. Look, there are many people not in church today. And when you look at why they're not in church, it's some little trial. God, I prayed for accommodation, and my landlord didn't give me accommodation. I'm not serving God anymore. I got divorced, so I'm not serving God anymore. Maybe something happened, I'm not serving God anymore. When you look at the reasons why people don't come to church or they're no longer serving God, you think, bro, look at this guy. Prison, and he's still serving the Lord. Beaten up by still serving the Lord. Shipwrecked. Man's going to go preach the gospel somewhere and got shipwrecked. And he still serves. Half of us here, if that happens to us, we'll look at God and say, hasta la vista. See you later. That's what we're going to say. But here's a man who goes through all of this and still comes through and doesn't lose his faith. In fact, at the end of his life, he said, I've run the race. He said, I've finished the race. He said, I've done the job. So what I'm preaching this morning will help you and I get to the end and be able to say, I've run the race. Even though I went through stuff, the things I went through did not stop me from finishing. Somebody say finishing. So what are those things that helped the Apostle Paul finish? What are those things? I said, you're going to read his writing and you begin to find where the apostle will say, I am convinced. First, I am convinced. Let's pick that up. The first I am convinced of the Apostle Paul that really helped him is found in Romans chapter 4, verse 21. Romans 4, 21. He uses that phrase for the first time. He says, I'm being fully convinced that what he has promised, if you want to put that on the board, if you have that. Romans 4, verse 21, and being fully promised that what he has promised, he's also able to perform. So the first I am convinced that helped the Apostle Paul is that the Apostle Paul was able to say that I am convinced that God is a promise keeper. You are fully convinced that God is able to do whatever he promises. So when the Apostle Paul is going through a season When it looks like God's promises are being delayed. When it looks like, God, you told me this 5 years ago, and it's 5 years later and it's not happening. When the Apostle Paul's kind of thinking, God, you made some promises to me, but they're not happening. When the Apostle Paul's going through times when prayers are not, the answers are not coming. He's in a dark place. Anyone been in a dark place before? He's in a dark place. Promises are not being fulfilled. You and I will abandon Jesus and abandon our faith. But in those dark times, the Apostle Paul will say, I am convinced that God is a promise keeper. The promises have not come, but I am convinced that God is a promise keeper. And that keeps him going. You know, I haven't received the promise yet, but I know that God never fails. What God has said hasn't happened yet, but I know that God is a promise keeper. I think it was in Numbers, the guy writing Numbers said that God is not a man that he should lie. So when I'm going through those moments where I'm thinking, God, you promised me this, God, you promised me that, but it's not happening, then I have to tell myself, I'm saying, bro, calm down. I am convinced. Even though it's dark, even though the promises are not coming, even though it looks like it's being delayed, but I am convinced that God is a promise. He keeps his promises. God is not a man that he should lie. God is not the son of man that he should change his mind. Has he said it? Would he not do it? When I'm going through those moments, I begin to go through the word, and I could feel the Spirit tell me that this very word of mine shall not return to me void. That keeps me going in the darkness. I'm thinking, okay, I can do this now. I know it's dark, but I can do this. Because I am convinced that when God says he will do something, he will do it. You know, God is not me. I don't always keep my promises. One time I promised, we're in Nigeria, I promised my dad, I promised my son, Jahazio, a bike. I don't even know whether I made that promise. He said I did. Maybe I did. You know, in those moments where your son will come, Daddy, buy me a bike. I didn't know what I was saying. And I said, I'll buy you a bike. And so this was around June. So July, my son reminded me. I said, you promised me a bike. I said, yeah, I'll get you a bike. Then we get to August. That big-headed son of mine, he told me again, said, Daddy, but you said you buy me a bike. I said, yeah, I'll do it. Then we got to November. I still haven't bought the bike. There were issues. I had to do other stuff. Then we get to December. He's thinking this bike will be my Christmas present. December came, no bike. 25th of December, no bike. We get into January. He blows up. He loses it. He comes to me and said, Daddy, the bike. I said, I'll do the bike. He said, you're a liar. My son called me a liar. He said, you're a liar. I said, have you lost your mind? He said, yeah, Daddy, you're a liar. I said, how am I a liar? He said, you promised me to buy me a bike, but you never bought me the bike. I had to quickly go buy the bike because my son called me a liar. God is not a liar. God is not Pastor Emmanuel. Pastor Emmanuel can make promises and not keep them. But when God makes a promise, he keeps it. So when I'm waiting for God's promise and it's not happening, I need to tell myself that I am convinced that when God says he will do something, he will do it. And that keeps me going in the dark. That keeps me navigating the darkness. Am I talking to someone here this morning? So that's the first I am convinced. I'm convinced that God is a promise. Turn to your neighbor and say, God is a promise keeper. What is the second one? The second one comes from the Apostle Paul as well. Let's look at 2 Timothy chapter 1 verse 12. 2 Timothy chapter 1 verse 12. Let's read this. Look at Paul again. Paul is writing, he says, that is why I am suffering as I am. Yet this is no cause for shame, because I know whom I have believed. Have you seen that word again? Have you seen that phrase again? And what? And what? Can you read that? And I'm convinced that what? He's going through a time of suffering, and he says, I'm not quite sure what's happening, but I am convinced that God is able to guide what I have entrusted to him until this day. You know what Paul is saying? Paul is saying, when I put something in God's hands, I am convinced that that thing is safe. if I put something in God's hands, then I shouldn't worry. Listen, there are things that you put in my hands that I could lose. I'm a man. There are things you could put in my hands and I might just forget. Paul is saying, I may not be sure of this and that, but one thing I'm convinced of is that if I take this stuff and put it in God's hands, God will preserve whatever I have put in his hands. So what do we have that we have put in God's hands? You know, my life is in God's hands. Is your life in God's hands? Well, if your life is in God's hands, then you should be convinced that no matter what happens, that God is able to preserve what I have put in his hands. What else have you put in God's hands? Your career, your marriage, your health, your job, your ministry, your children. Your children. Half of the time we don't even know where they are. But all I need to do is to remind God that Jehaziel is in your hands, and I have peace. God, Catriel is in your hands, and I feel peace. God, Trinity is in your hands, and God, my wife is in your hands, and I feel peace. Why? Because I am convinced that he's able to guard what I have entrusted in his hands. You see, I could give stuff to Raymond, and I know Raymond is very, very, faithful, but Raymond's still a human being. I could give something to Raymond, and he could lose it. I could give something to Raymond, and that thing can go missing. But if I put something in God's hands, God will preserve it. So when Paul is going through a dark moment, and Paul has put a lot of things in God's hands, and he's going through a dark moment, he's able to say, you know what? I'm not quite sure what I'm doing now, but I'm convinced that everything I have put in God's hands will be safe. And when he says that, he's able to navigate the darkness. And so you and Apostle Paul might be going through the same thing. He comes out at the other end, and you don't come out, not because you don't believe, but because you don't know what he knows. Remember what I said at the beginning, that those who know, what did I say? Those who know their God. Those who know their God. So the Apostle Paul goes through the same thing that you've gone through, and he survives, you don't survive. You say, Apostle, why did you survive and I didn't survive? And his reply will be, there's stuff I know that you don't know. I know that if I put anything in God's hands, that thing is safe. I know that when God makes a promise, he keeps you and I will go through a time when the promises of God are not happening and we backslide. The Apostle Paul is continuing. Say, Apostle, why are you still serving the Lord? Even though some of the promises have not been answered. He said, I am convinced that it might take time, but God will fulfill his promise. And that's why he's still serving. You backsliding, but he's still serving. In fact, if you look at the reason why you backslid, and you look at what he has gone through, you'll be thinking, how come I backslid because of this small stuff, but you're still sojourning on for Jesus, even when you've gone through some hard stuff? Yeah, because I am convinced that when God says he will do something, he will do it. Genesis chapter 3, God promised that the seed of the woman will crush the head of the serpent. You know who the seed of the woman is? You know who the seed of the woman is? Jesus. Do you know it took 3,000 years to fulfill that promise? But it was still fulfilled. Oh, am I talking to the right church? He says the seed of the woman will crush the head. The first promise God made in the Bible. He said the seed of the woman will crush the head of the serpent. It took him 3,000 years to fulfill it. But he still fulfill it, because I am convinced that when God says he will do so. I don't know who has come to this church and you're kind of beginning to doubt what God said he will do for you. Maybe time is going. Maybe you're going to, the time is gone. You begin to think, God, is this ever going to happen? Let me tell you, if he said it, the question is not whether he will do it. The question is, did he really say it? Because if he said it, he will. Oh, am I talking to the right church? If he said, I don't care how dark it is, I don't care how challenging it is, if God said it, God will do it. If God said it, God will do it. So let's go to the third one. This is my best one. This is my best one. Where I come from, we have a culture of abandoned properties, abandoned stuff. People abandon stuff. I come from a culture where very few things get finished, get completed. So the government will start a project, and halfway, they'll just stop. So we grew up in a culture where nothing ever gets completed. Marriage is done complete. People go to school and they drop out. Hey, bro, have you graduated? No, I didn't graduate. What happened? I just did 2 years in university. I kind of felt I'm not doing it again. That's a culture I've come from. A culture where things are never completed. A culture where, if you look at the landscape, you see a landscape of abandoned projects, abandoned marriages, abandoned assignments, abandoned ministry. Problem is that when we then come and we start working with God, we begin to think that God is into abandoned projects. We begin to think that God is like us. When we start, how many people here can be honest with me that there are a few things you started but you didn't finish? I was talking to my brother here, and I said, one time I tried to go learn how to play keyboard. Can you ever believe that I like music? You don't know I like music. I like music. I went to go learn how to play keyboard. I attended a few lessons, and I woke up one day, said, no, I'm not sure I want to do this anymore. I abandoned that. One time, my wife told me, listen, my wife can swim. She likes to swim. So when we go on holiday, she's swimming, and I'm just there reading a book. She said, listen, this is not how we should be. You should be in the water with me. So I got a swimming instructor. I said, okay, let me go learn how to swim. So I get a swimming instructor. And then my first swimming lesson, I jumped into the pool, and I wasn't floating. I was drinking. I'm drinking the water. Somehow I wasn't floating. I'm going down. And as I'm going down, I'm drinking the water. I'm drinking the pool water. I came out of that lesson, and I abandoned it. I said, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing that. Yeah. And I mean, you're laughing at me. But if you look at your life, you find a few things that you started that you didn't finish. It is what we do. We start stuff we don't finish. Right? Go count it. Well, I started this, I didn't finish. There are people who are good at starting, but they are not good at finishing. But let me tell you something. When the Apostle Paul is working with God, and God begins something, and the challenges begin to come, and it looks like he's not going to finish. Here's what the Apostle Paul said that helped him. Put Philippians 1 verse 6 on the board. This is my best. This has Philippians 1 verse 6 on the board. Put it on the board. And I want everybody to pay attention to it because this is going to help you. Philippians 1 verse 6. Can you see it? Have you seen that phrase again? Now he's not saying, I am convinced. Now he's not saying, I am sure. He's saying the same thing, but he's using a different phrase. What phrase is he using now? He said, I am certain. Look at what he's saying. He said, I am certain that God, let's all read it together. I want to ready go. Read it together. I want to ready go. I am certain that God, who began the good work within you, will continue his work until it is finally finished. You know what he's saying? Paul is saying, when I'm working with God and things look like, I am convinced that God is a finisher. That when God begins something, he does what? He finishes it. Oh, Pastor Emmanuel might start swimming classes and doesn't finish it. Pastor Emmanuel might start keyboard lessons and abandons it. Pastor Emmanuel might start one time I wanted to go do a PhD. I've not completed that. I can start things and not finish, but when God starts something, God does what? He finishes it. And when God starts something in your life, be rest assured that whatever God starts in your life, he's able to finish. So when things are not going well, Apostle says, I am convinced that he who began a good work in me is faithful to complete it. Turn to your neighbor and say, God is a completer. Oh, I don't know whether that means anything to you. If you're like me, that I have started a lot of things that I did not complete, it's reassuring. It's reassuring to know that when I'm working with God, whatever he begins, he's able to complete. He's a completer. He's a finisher. I don't know whether you've come here this morning and there are a few things that you think, oh God, would this ever be completed? Maybe you come here this morning and the few things God started in your life and you're beginning to doubt. You're beginning to worry. Would this ever be completed? Would I ever see the end of this? Am I talking to some of the real people here? Would I ever see the end of this? When I returned from Nigeria, I said, God, would I, I'm squatting in my in-laws' place, but I have a house. My tenant won't go. I said, God, I went to Africa to serve you. And I said, God, would I ever see the end of this? I said, God, did I do something wrong to go become a missionary? Right? God, if the Apostle Paul was in my situation, you know what he would say? You know what he would say? The Apostle Paul would say, I am certain that the God who began a good work in me is faithful to complete it. And once he says that, he will have peace. Remember Helen Keller, who says, I don't want the peace that passes understanding, but what I want is the understanding that brings peace. Once you have this understanding, you know what will happen? You know what will happen when you have this understanding? What will happen? You have peace. So you have peace. Do you know the secret of having peace in the storm? Do you know the secret of having peace in the storm? The secret of having peace in the storm is what you know. What you know. So if I'm going through a storm, and I know that God is a finisher, it doesn't matter what the storm is saying. I know that I don't care what the storm is saying. I know that this thing God has started in my life, He is going to finish it. And once I know that, what happens to me? What happens to me? I feel peace. The understanding that brings peace. It's what you know, It's what you know. So the apostle says, listen, I am certain that God who began the good work. What good work has God begun in you that you're not quite sure now? I've come to tell you, Brother Edmund, I've come to tell you that the good work God started in you, you may not finish it, but God can and will. You see, listen, it's not me that will finish it. If it depends on me alone, it won't be finished. I mean, you saw how I abandoned swimming lessons. My wife is telling me, go back. I said, I ain't going back. I don't want to die. I'm not going back. I'm not swimming no more. I'm done. Right? Because it's me. But when God begins, what God begins, He finishes. I want this word to echo in your mind forever. So that when you're going through dark times, say, listen, I know this is dark. I know there's a storm. But I know that God started this. And God will finish it. I'm going to give you a final one. This is my wife's favorite. The one I'm going to give you and we'll end. This is my wife's favorite one. This is the one that, this is her favorite one. How many people here are single people, you've dated a woman or dated a man and you got jilted? Anyone here? They jilted you, they left you. It's like their love finished. They ran out of love for you. Right? They ran out of love for you, and I remember being in university one time. It was Valentine. I'm on campus. This is Nigeria now. There's no students' loan or grants. My parents will send me money, so I'm in university. I'm on campus, and it's Valentine. I'm dating this girl, and I take my feeding money to go buy her Valentine presents. The best Valentine. I took all my feeding money, everything I had. This is. My parents have sent me to university, and they're giving me a budget. This, every month, this is 300 naira is your upkeep money. My rent's been paid. My school fees been paid. I take my upkeep money as a sign of love for this woman. I go buy her Valentine present. It looks like I brought it with a trolley. I was feeling good. I love this girl. That's my feeding money. That's my upkeep money. that's my upkeep money. I'm a young boy. I don't know what I'm doing. That's the first time I felt the pain of love. I go buy this stuff. I turn up in her hostel. I'm walking like a dude with a lot of swagger. I turn up. It's Happy Valentine's. I bring all the things I bought with my upkeep money. And still, weeks later, she jilted me, abandoned me. Her love for me ended. After all I did, our relationship ended. When you've come through that kind of life and you start walking with God, sometimes you begin to think maybe one day God will stop loving me because one husband stopped loving you. Maybe one day you think maybe God will stop caring for me because one guy stopped caring for you. Maybe you've walked into this place and you think maybe God might jilt me like Sam jilted me. Can I tell you something? Can I tell you something? Paul went through those times when people jilted him, when people abandoned him, when people said, Paul, we don't love you anymore. How did Paul survive? Look at the final, I am convinced. Final, I am convinced. Put Romans chapter 8, verse 38, and we can end with that. Because I don't know who you are. Maybe you're serving the Lord today and you're not quite sure whether the love of God will continue forever. Maybe you've done some stuff. How many people know here there are a lot of people, their love for us is conditional? Have you been in a relationship where they love you only when you're cool with them? They love you only when you agree with them. They love you only when you do what they want. But the moment you say, that's it, they don't love you no more. Their love for you is over. And maybe you've come in to serve the Lord and you're thinking, God is like my boyfriend that jilted me. God is like my husband that abandoned me. I've come to tell you that when Paul went through that situation, he had another I am convinced for you and I. And what is that I am convinced? Look at that. Look at that. For I am convinced that neither death, nor life, neither angels, nor demons, neither the present, nor the future, nor any powers, neither height, nor depth, nor anything else in all creation will be able to do what? Oh, God will be able to do what? Separate us. So when they abandon me because I said something wrong, when they stop loving me because I said something wrong, God says nothing, absolutely nothing can separate you from my love for you. And that keeps Paul going. When Paul says this, it doesn't matter what people say about him. Your love don't matter to me once God loves me. If you abandon me, it doesn't really matter if God hasn't. The only love that really matters is God's love for me. And here's God saying that nothing. Somebody say nothing. This is God saying nothing. Nothing can separate Emmanuel from the love of God. And when I hear that, it doesn't matter if you stop loving me. When I hear that, it doesn't matter if you don't like me. When I hear that, it doesn't matter how I have been treated. You could treat me poorly. Your love for me can end. But when I remember that nothing, somebody say nothing. When I remember that nothing can separate me from the love of God, I'm able to keep going. I'm able to keep walking through the darkness. Because the love of God is unconditional. He's going to love me anyway. You only love me when I say the right things. You only love me when I agree. You only love me when I do what you want. But God says, not life, nor death, height, nor depth. He said, nothing will separate me from the love of God. When I hear that, there's a peace that comes on me because I know that. When I know that, even when I have done wrong, I can go to God and confess my sins and know that his love for me continues. That God's not going to strike me off. That God's not going to delete me from his address book. Have you broken up with someone before? I know this woman that when she breaks up with you, the first thing she does is to delete you from her phone. I said, why are you deleting the number? She said, I'm going to delete them. Well, she just deletes people. You've dated her for 5 years and it goes on. The first thing she does, she just gets her phone out and deletes your number. You just delete your number. I'm thinking this is a psychotic. You just delete the number. Can I tell somebody here? God will never delete your number. Paul says that nothing will separate me from the love of God. So if you're going to survive in this pilgrimage, I'm ending. If you're going to survive in this pilgrimage, understand that you're going to go through dark moments. And it's what you know that will help you navigate through the dark moments. And there are 4 things you need to do. The first one, help me here. The first one is that I am convinced that God is what? What's the first one? What's the first one? Anyone? I am convinced that what? Anyone? What's the first one? What's the first? I'm summarizing. I like to summarize. What's the first one? Anyone? What's the first one? That I am convinced that God is a promise keeper. Right? That God is a promise keeper. That when God says something, he will do it. He will do it. Second one is that I'm convinced that God is a preserver. That when I put something in his hands, if I put my career in his hands, my career is safe. If I put my health in his hands, my health is safe. That's the second one. The third one is what? The third one is what? That God is a finisher. I don't care how long it's taking Marilyn. If God said it, he will do it. I don't care how long it takes Cassandra. If God promised you that, all you need to do is to be sure that he said it. That's all you need. Just be sure he said it. If he said it, he will do it. That's the third one. And the final one is I am convinced that nothing will separate me from the love of God in Christ Jesus. That's all I have for you this morning. Let's give God praise this morning. Amen. I want every head bowed, all eyes closed.